Hello, everybody. Scott Golden with the Pro Wrestling Logic YouTube channel and the World Class Championship Wrestling Review Series. We are on May 22nd, 1982. Really rather eventful show this week as we have a gimmick match, so to speak. We have a lumberjack match upcoming in part of our programming here, but we open with the Texas champion, still by old Bill Irwin, against Carlos Zapata. Decent match for these two. Zapata, who originally, when we started, 6 months ago now, was a rather big deal here, in terms of just being an enhancement talent, and now he's in competitive matches with the Texas champion. So it proves that things pay off. Obviously, it is Irwin that does the dominant nature of things. But even something as simple as ring positioning is a big deal here, as Zapata gets a break from almost losing when he slides either a foot or an arm under the bottom rope. And it's just, he's made to look competitive. Obviously, Zapata is a guy who, again, in other territories might have been just an enhancement talent, but here in Texas, where they tend to, from what I can gather, to run a lesser crew, smaller crew, gets a chance to shine from time to time, and actually dominates the middle portion of the match. Irwin moving out of the way of a buckle attack, and then eventually goes and gets the diving knee, running knee, a la Harley Race for the victory. And then we see the Spoiler versus Rick Harris in our second bout of the evening. And of course, the Spoiler has been a mainstay in Texas, as mentioned before. Harris, who later becomes Black Bart. But here is obviously fodder for the Spoiler. I don't really know that standing and trading holds that as Harris does here in the early parts of the match. Makes a lot of sense with a guy like the Spoiler. I think a brawling style would have done better for everybody involved, those watching the match, and just for credibility purposes. But Mr. Harris does make a good showing for himself, staying competitive for a few minutes with the Spoiler. Spoiler obviously using things like walking the ropes and other attacks. There is a point, or several of them actually, where Harris becomes frustrated with his inability to put away his adversary and starts to cheat a little bit, using the ropes and closed fists, among other things. But eventually we do move into seeing the Spoiler get the victory. He gets the victory after about 10 minutes of action or so, and it is clear that they are going somewhere with him that's a little longer lasting. At least it looks that way. And it's always good to have at least one masked guy in a territory. I think the mask adds something just to the mystique, and that mystique is kind of interesting. Spoiler winning the contest with a series of moves right after the top rope, the top rope, I guess fist drop or arm drop, and then he hops up there and just drops a boot to Harris for victory. Kind of a lame finish. Just it doesn't seem very impactful. Bugsy McGraw talks about being able to beat everybody, being able to handle anything, not being intimidated by Andre the Giant. Going to chop Andre the Giant down to size when needed. He's not scared of anybody or anything. Bugsy is certainly crazy and proves it in this promo. Obviously, Andre coming to town, I assume, is going to lead to Andre Bundy. I'm not that far ahead, but they've been hyping that for months now, so I would assume there's a confrontation coming between Andre the Giant and King Kong Bundy somewhere in the not too terribly distant future, next few months or whatever. Then we move to the lumberjack match, which was better than expected in the sense that they are true lumberjacks. I think now lumberjack matches are relatively crazy. They always end in a smallish type scenario, but they don't end that way here, as the lumberjacks actually do their job and keep the combatants in the ring. Kabuki and the entire Von Erich family, really, although Kevin and Kerry predominantly, have been going at it with each other. They go right into brawling pretty quickly. Again, as is typical, the idea behind the match for Von Erich is to get the claw. The idea for Kabuki, and sometimes the claw is in weird positions, like right near the belt line a couple of times by Von Erich. Not always the iron claw on the temple. Kabuki trying to get nerve holds and the like, and that's basically the story of the match. But the lumberjacks do succeed more at keeping the guys in the ring, more with each other up to the finish. Bundy on the outside is willing to take shots when he can at Von Erich, and obviously the Bundy Von Erich thing is a staple. I'm going to assume the entire run that Bundy has here. There's several moments of a sleeper by Kevin, almost a rear naked choke style, as we see Kevin take the back of Kabuki, which I found interesting there. Eventually goes back to the claw again. Kabuki not staying down for the claw, refusing to stay down. I don't know that that's necessarily a good or bad thing. It is what it is. Anyway, and so the sell of the claw is a pretty big deal. I don't know that we get a defined finish here. Referee actually pulling Kevin off and giving him the momentary, I guess, lapse, because Kabuki made it to the ropes at one point. Again, back to the kicks and the like, and then we see several people trying to break up all of this chaos, and it doesn't end well. The referee almost gets pulled into the concept of it all. Gary Hart gets pulled towards and into the ring. The lumberjacks finally do start beating on Von Erich, primarily Bundy getting shots in, and what's interesting, though, I mean, by this point, Kabuki kind of a guy who you look at and are, I won't say intimidated by, but certainly, like, you take him seriously, but at the same time, Kabuki is also able to gain the victory due to outside interference from Bundy, among others. But they saved that until the very end of the match, unlike lumberjack matches of modern era where they blow the gimmick early, which is just foolishness. But Bundy post-match lays Von Erich out on the floor, says he's going to get a $1,000 bonus for doing so. Then we go into our next match, and that is Bugsy McGraw against Mike Bond. It's about as eventful as one would imagine with these two. Bugsy, though, does carry himself with a certain swagger that I don't think can be duplicated even now, even in the current day. And so Bond is, able to hang with his adversary. Competitive match, although it's clear that the pushed talent is Bugsy McGraw, and McGraw does get your victory in a matter of a few short minutes. But what's interesting is, I mean, there's several points in the match where even with knee lifts and basic strikes, Bond does look like he could win, which I think one of the advantages of this area is that Fritz was good, or whoever Fritz had in charge, mostly Gary Hart, was good at making sure matches were competitive enough that everyone looks credible to win at a given moment. But when they do, if they're an underneath guy, it's a surprise. It's something that's exciting. The top rope splash dive is the way that Bugsy gets his victory here, and the way he gets most of his singles wins. We move next into a promo where Bundy says that he will get rid of all the Von Erichs. He's going to eventually face Fritz Von Erich at an upcoming Star Wars event. They do not announce a date for Star Wars at this point. Arman Hussein says that this should be no problem to defeat the old man, breaking the age-old adage of not calling your adversary old. This is the first time I've really seen Bundy have a lot of fire in a promo, so that was a little unique and interesting in a good way. We close the program with Ken Mantell, who I don't know when he takes the book, but I know he does take the book, but I don't think it's here at all, against King Kong Bundy. They're given about 5 minutes, which is about 3 minutes too long. Again, the one complaint I have about World Class consistently is that with a guy like Bundy, they give him a little too much. Now he's dominating the match here, which is a good sign. And then we do see one of the more violent acts of World Class thus far, as Kevin Von Erich runs out with a steel chair and just wallops Bundy with it several times. Bundy is said to have a concussion from this. Oh, wait, I think it was Arman Hussein. One of the people attacked in this whole thing, because Kevin was hitting anything that moved. But there was talk of a concussion after this. I would believe it to be legitimate, the way Kevin swung this chair. Here's the way you don't swing a chair in 2020 for sure. But Kevin has to be held back. His rage and anger is unparalleled, and he is going to get his revenge. He takes a brutal shot at King Kong Bundy and catches him on the shoulder. It looks like in the replay, but if you were watching that in real time, you thought he got walloped in the head, something fierce. And anyway, that is the close for this particular broadcast. We will be back with the end of May 1982. Worth checking out. Thank you for staying with us. In any event, keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment. Till next time, everybody.